Welcome to Higher Density Living. You're back with Alex and Jason.
Alex, just right before the show, what happened?
This
is funny. We were planning to talk about this topic.
Yeah, we're planning to talk about this dog topic, and my phone is blowing up, and I had it on Do Not Disturb, only to find out that Amanda is calling me saying that the dog has lodged its entire lower jaw and teeth into an animal bone. So the animal bone, the shin bone has a hole in the center.
Mm-hmm.
It has just completely just jammed it in there. And the dog is running around whimpering, and I'm getting a call saying, well, what do I do? What do I do? The dog's gums are bleeding. It's whining. And I'm like, rip it off.
Yeah.
Take it off the same way she got her jaw in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do.
But the dog required human intervention. And I think that's an interesting aspect of what we need to talk about here with our dogs on this HDL podcast.
Yeah, let's start, and we were talking earlier on this, but let's start from the very beginning, this human-dog interaction, and then we'll get into the spiritual implications of it.
Yeah. So in the beginning of human-dog interaction, there was a great benefit for foraging tribes or people to have the benefit of a dog come in and work with them, tracking animals, looking for certain mushrooms. You can even see that now in Italy. They still use dogs to look for truffles.
Right.
So not much of that has changed, but there's a beneficial partnership that happens. If we find the meat, well, me as a dog get a share in the meat, and this human or this other animal that I'm interacting with, it's not a threat to me.
Right.
So I can pretty much hang out with it. And then if we draw back even further from what we learned, is that some 8,000 years ago, after the end of the Ice Age, people in northern Siberia, in Russia near Lake Baklai, were actually burying these animals, these large 100-pound wolves, at these ceremonial sites. And they would adorn them in the elk bone necklaces, and then around them were, the bodies of the people within that tribe. They didn't bury it next to it. It was like the centerpiece of the graveyard, the dog. So it's interesting that we've had a relationship, whether it's a relationship of love that you might feel now with your current dog, or as one out of a working relationship or mutual, benefit, very symbiotic, which you'd find in the old tribal cultures, people that were very, they were on the move all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That what we've done with dogs and how they have also developed with our needs and how society has begun to change. When a lot of people go to purchase an animal at this moment, they're like, oh, this is a working breed.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still sticking it inside your house, never really goes outside, doesn't do anything. Dog's bored out of its mind. It's depressed because it's not taking on any task. Like, that's what the dog wants to do. Baked into its genetics over thousands and thousands of years, this is what the task is that needs to be done. Yeah, but we just say, oh, I like the way this dog looks, I want to bring it in. So we've almost like strayed away in a great sense from the real working relationship between human and dog. Now we just have it really as a pet. Even though it's domesticated, it's not gnawing on my arm while I'm sleeping.
Right.
It still has a job that it wants to do. It needs to do. It's baked into its DNA. Much like we as human beings are doing everything we can to evolve through our thoughts and our actions in this world so that we can become better people.
That evolution is baked within us.
Yeah.
I would say it's not from here, but that to evolve, that was put into our DNA.
Yeah, and evolution requires work.
Right.
And so if we think about the dog, we're almost like slowing its evolution because we're not allowing it to work.
Mm-hmm.
It can still have the domestic atmosphere, the comforts of our life, but it requires that job still. It needs something to do. It needs that stimulus. It needs that input. Because without it, what learning is there to be done? It's a small conscious being. The thoughts are probably not all rational. They're not tool making. But it does have some sort of emotional thought process that's happening within that dog.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into a little bit more practical, and this is going to be a short episode, but the deepening of the spiritual connection that we can have with the dog, and then as they're living with us in this physical form, how if we understand what the dog, because we believe in learn, teach, learn,
mm-hmm.
and that if we look at it in this connection that's more than physical, and we begin to allow the dog through its attributes teach us, because we know dogs have this tremendous spiritual ability to heal.
Yeah, and they're so good at sensing things that we can't sense.
Right.
And what's nice about a dog and its ability to heal is that regardless of who you are, good or bad person,
Right.
the dog is like going to show love.
Right.
You know, if you're the master and you've come home after the day, and whether your job is you're like an assassin and you kill people for a living, or you're a doctor that saves lives,
Right.
it's going to show the same amount of love. And there's a great amount of learning that has to be done with that sort of selflessness. And I think we should take that from the spiritual aspect and really deepen that. So let's think about this for a second. When I say that I love my dog, what I'm saying is that I understand the dog. I understand its needs and my relationship with that animal. And they are highly emotional, a dog is. They're not triggered by logic. They're triggered by what is the response that I feel emotionally that is going to define that dog's thought patterns. So if my thoughts are inherently negative, right? If I'm having just like a bad day, that's going to exude and it's going to come out and it's going to nail this dog in a sine wave format, and it's going to feel that sense of discomfort. So this fine spiritual connection between our thoughts and our emotions are going to be shared with this other living being that we're coexisting with. So in the development of our spirit, it's a nice way for us to understand, okay, maybe this is like the first step of me understanding how I can coexist with nature.
Right.
You got to understand that just because it's a tree or a wild bear or a domesticated dog in your house, your thoughts are affecting all of those things. So that emotional level is going to affect the spiritual development of that animal and your own. And if it's living in a state of fear and then you have fear within your own mind, that combination of forces is going to inhibit you from having your own sort of spiritual evolution. It's a bad domestic partnership between man and dog. So,
yeah, and you can see that if you go to a dog park and you
Yeah.
see the extremely fearful dogs, and then you look at the owner, and that's like she's like
the owner's really
he
fearful.
or she's like hovering around the dog, and then like so afraid, but wants to be at the dog park, but doesn't know how to accept society. And then you start, if you got into the owner's psyche, then you would begin to understand that. But I want to shift real quick back to the wolves, because there's this mystical prowess
Yeah.
that every group of people, whether they're in Siberia or whether they're in South America, that viewed wolves and dogs in this mystical, enigmatic way. You know what I mean?
The animal itself knew the landscape. It was so native to it. It was so normal and right within that environment. And it never took more than it needed. Even though it was a great hunter, it also had a great respect for everything going on. And there was a cooperation between that animal and the the inanimate landscape with it.
Yes.
And so it's much like other cultures. They look at hawks, in ancient Egypt, they thought that was the eye of Ra. Like the hawk was always watching from above. It had that greatest view. So you pay deep respect to this animal when you begin to realize how it interacts in its own environment. And then through that, there's much to be learned about how we as human beings choose to interact with that animal in our own environment and how we choose to work as a collective. And so when you look at that, it could be that thing for a culture, because if it's something that is in their life all the time, especially in northern Siberia, well, that's something we should look up to. Not the fact that it's a dog and it doesn't have the same amount of conscious thoughts, but the way that it lives and interacts within this world. That's that sort of spiritual growth and being in tune with that environment that we should all strive to have. And that's why those hunters, they want to be the wolf. They want to embody that because it just knows. It has the ability to integrate itself intuitively with its environment.
Yeah, that alpha wolf.
Yeah.
The one that all the other wolves kind of cower down to, but love.
Yeah.
And
there's a respect for it. And that wolf protects.
All the females are drawn to that one.
Yeah.
And however you want to look at that in our society, we see a lot of that imprint in humanity.
And imprints are a really good word for it.
Yeah, it's just an evolutionary process.
And we've lost a lot of that intuiting.
Yes.
Our environment isn't built for really intuiting. It's a very rigid, square, concrete environment, and it doesn't allow you the dynamic nature really of a coexistence. It's very structured. It's very limited. And the wolf itself is it's the epitome of hunting, survival, intuition, exploration. They're all over the place.
Well, I think this is a prime example of socialism, and we know that's failed many times in different, they've tried it everywhere.
Well, it fails because the government tries to force it on people rather than everybody coming together and say, this is what we want.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at that alpha that alpha wolf, and they've had female alpha wolf, so it doesn't matter male, female. But you look at that, and it's this opportunity to learn, teach, learn. Like for instance, it's this ability to have humility and look at something that's surviving and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a surviving wolf; it's a thriving wolf.
Yeah,
its abilities to hunt, its abilities to lead.
There's a lot for us to learn.
Has gone
from
above the pack.
Yeah,
and said, "I'm number one."
Yeah,
and we the problem that we have, especially here in America, that really pisses me off, is we begin to develop jealousy when somebody comes up like that.
When somebody elevates.
Yes, when someone, instead of saying humbly, like a wolf, like putting your shoulders down, not in a self-esteem demeaning way, but say, right now it's time for me to learn.
Yeah, that person put in the effort.
Yes.
It's time for me to shut up and listen.
Yes.
They really have worked hard and proven to themselves and to their environment that they're capable of this sort of defense and tactic and ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for me to be jealous of. It should be to be like, wow, I should strive for something like that.
Yeah, it's like if Elon Musk was in the room right now and we're talking about building businesses or going to space. I'm going to shut the fuck up.
What do I know? Tell me.
He's the expert.
I'll be like this. I'll be like literally gooey about it, you know?
Exactly. But as we get into dogs and we get into them being spiritual beings, they're free-spirited. They have this free-spirited energy about them, and it's pure and divine.
Well, yeah, because they're not really having thoughts.
Mm-mm.
So there's no, remember how I talk about meditation, moving into the thought void?
Right.
It's about thinking about not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They're really not thinking. They're just living in that moment. So their ability to spiritually perceive everything that is happening it's not hindered.
Right.
It's just flowing through. But when we come up, we smash them with our bad thoughts. If you're abusive to your animal, you're clubbing it, know, depending on how people interact, they need to appreciate that sort of flowing connection that the animal has in its material self with its spiritual self.
Well, because the dog is just being, and it's just loving unconditionally. And whenever you're imposing your dysfunctions, if you want to use that word, your lack of learning, whenever you're imposing that onto that animal and it's just absorbing it, then it's, if you really pay attention to the spiritual aspects of it, it's teaching you right then and there this ability to be able to love you regardless. Like an abused dog will still love its owner and say, "This is my owner."
It's not judging the owner.
Yes, exactly.
There's no judgment. It just lets it be in that situation and it takes it as it comes. And it's not being picking or choosing.
Yeah, and when I began to see unconditional love in something, this physical form, unconditional love, and then I see presence, and then I see this ability to have this direct connection with the universe.
Isn't that something we should all be striving for?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting into.
And so that's why I drop back to the Siberians and their respect for that 100-pound wolf.
Yes.
They recognize these things, and these people were out in nature all the time. They were more intuitive than we were. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, look at this thing really intuiting within its environment. Again, we need to continue to strive to that sort of connection.
Yeah, and I had on my business podcast, I had a lady, she has this, she's been on Oprah and all that. It's called Paws and Stripes. It's located here in Albuquerque. Yep. And so she helps, severe people with PTSD, can't even go to Walmart or anything. And they bring this dog in, and then they create this bond, and then the dog begins to heal them. So whenever I have something that's present, something that unconditionally loves, and something that's willing to just accept and forgive and live in this moment of happiness, is that not a healer and a spiritual teacher?
No, it is.
I mean, think about it.
No, it is. And imagine if we were all like that, how much healing would be done in the world. If we started really learning from the dog, and
so in its form, I know you got a bone stuck in its mouth or whatever, but still, and we look at it and it's
lodged.
Yeah, we look at it in its silliness.
Yeah.
But, and then we look at a dog as being lower than us. But in that form of those attributes that it's teaching us, can't we look at that and say, this dog has this ability to teach us lessons?
Yeah. When I think of that situation, although it is comical, there's a huge amount of innocence to it.
Yes.
Where the dog is exploring the aspects of how can I really move through this bone as efficient as possible. That was its learning process, and it emotionally got scared. And it says, can you come and comfort me in this state of emotion that I'm feeling?
So whether we look at dogs, we could say people that we disagree with, because of their actions.
Mhm.
You know, we look at issues of human rights and different things like that. How do we approach them as an equal and understand that they're an equal with us? Because they are.
Yeah.
So, but we always want to create judgment and not display love. And we're going to get into, you know, the law of love in our creational series. But do you know what I mean? It's like we're always. I even catch myself doing that. I'm like, well, you know, this person isn't this or this.
Can I ask you something? I got two different types of designer doodles. You know what a golden doodle is?
Yeah.
And one of them's black hair and one's white hair. They're both golden doodles, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is there a difference in their value? No, they both still cost $6,000 a piece or whatever it is.
Right.
So why would you impose any sort of other judgment on anything else? Why is it to say that anything is any less? When you look at the dog, it's not the fact that it is a dog. Big whoop. That thing has creational energy in it. Just as much as you and I have it inside of us.
Yes.
I might be a white doodle, you may be a black doodle, or vice versa.
Right.
But it doesn't make you any less because of the way you look. No, you still share that creational energy. We're sharing in those, you know, that flow through, whether it be your chakras, your energy centers, or, you know, pulling down that quantum energy from the universe itself. There's no difference. Everybody has the ability to do it. It's just the way we frame things in our world, in our perspective, it puts undue judgment where it doesn't need to be, and we prospectively strip away someone's beauty and power that everybody can share in by saying that, well, you really don't have that because of the way you look. What's wrong with the Chihuahua and the wolf? They both have creational energy inside of them. I don't care that they're a dog. I need to just respect that creation has created this thing. That's what it is. Over time, energy has assimilated itself into this thing that is a dog. But that energy needs to be appreciated. That dog is essentially a thought. The way dogs are now are a function of our thoughts over time.
You know, I was thinking about this because dogs lead into, and you had mentioned it earlier, children. And I was like, what if instead of taking our wants and our ego and our desires, what if we asked them what they wanted?
Yeah.
What if we began to do that across all the different type of species? What if we we have alien interconnection?
That's cool.
You know, what if we asked them what they wanted? You know, like let's say because I feel like in the next 25, 50 years, we're going to know that aliens truly exist and it's going to be proven.
Yeah.
But so if they come to us, what are you here for? What do you want?
That's a phenomenal thought. And
because they're spiritual beings. So
yeah, and whether or not you have the ability to linguistically ask this animal,
right.
Sometimes it just takes quiet observing.
Right.
Animals are not tricky. They are 100% of who they are all the time. So through the observation of that animal, you can watch it and be like, this is why it's here. This is exactly how it interacts in this greater system of coexistence on this closed circuit that we have that is the globe. You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would look at it and say, well, I can't talk to it. But listening is just not words.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's, talking to it is listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
When you say conversation, somebody's got to listen, like you're doing right here. And by you, talking to me and I'm listening, I'm also talking within my own mind, trying to understand and structure those thoughts. My observing of whatever this thing might be is actually me communicating with it. It allows me to build a deeper respect because I can watch how it interacts with its environment, how it manages itself. And that is when you start to get to that state of love and understanding and spiritual, evolution, because you're saying, I get it. Mm-hmm. I get how I'm going to interact with it. I can see what needs to be learned from here. I know why it needs to be in this environment.
Yeah, and I think a perfect example is that was when I did beekeeping. The bees knew. They knew I had to come so peaceful to them. They knew. Like if I was in a hurry, if I moved the lid wrong, if I was energetically, they're so empathic. If I was energetically all out of whack, I'm not going to have a good time. They're just going to be dodging me, If I come in there and I'm like, I just relax. I took some deep breaths. I cleared my mind. I'd come out there. They'd just be happy as can be.
No pun intended.
Yeah, happy as could be. I didn't even catch I said that.
It's the same thing goes for, horses.
Yeah, or anything, yeah.
We have a great bond as human being with horses.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you see in the dog is the same thing in a horse. Horse is just a big old dog.
Mm-hmm.
Birds and everything of the like, and fish, and just the aspect that a wolf, not a wolf, but a whale in the ocean, a giant blue whale, can respect the fact that a scuba diver is next to it and not club it to death.
Yeah, and I want to say this word. If we allow them to show us, we can learn so much. We can learn about life. We can learn about love. We can learn about spirituality. And the big one that we all don't like to talk about, but we can learn about loss. Dogs teach us that.
Dogs are like your first precursor to losing something.
Mm-hmm. We've all been 8, 9, 10 years old. Yeah. And then your favorite dog dies.
And through that allowance, you have to drop all your fear, anxiety, and barriers down.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a respect for letting the other thing be.
Do you think dogs are sentient beings?
Sentient?
Yeah.
They have a thought process, but it's not a logical, rational thinking thought process. It's more of the emotions are driving the next action.
Yeah, because there's always this, and I don't like that. I was talking to somebody the other day, this, if you did bad, then you get reincarnated into a bug or, a dog or whatever.
I can't stand that stuff. Hold on. I want to look up, everybody be patient. I'm looking up sentient, and I want to understand its root. So,
yeah, SENTIENT.
Yeah, because
sentient.
You asked me from a comparison, are the dogs sentient? Are they capable? So sentient means capable of feeling, to feel. And you and I said that there's a difference between feeling and emotion.
Right.
So I'm going to say, no, the dogs are not sentient. Are the dogs emotional? Do they have thoughts? But do those thoughts accrue towards feelings? Probably not.
Right.
They just know their automatic response, like when the dog's ridge goes up, even though it knows better, even though it knows you're going to tell it, like, no, like, calm down. The ridge still goes up.
Right.
But it's not a function of feeling, because if you have the feeling, then you can start to control those emotions. No, the dog just understands emotional triggers and what your response is to it in the environment in itself.
Well, the reason I wanted people to understand this is because when you can begin to communicate with something, even though we view it as an equal, because we don't want to put judgment on it, we still need to understand its place in creation.
Yeah, it is a dog.
Yeah, because then you get into the grizzly bear guy who got ate.
Yeah.
Because he was thinking, grizzly. Did you ever see that show, that crazy guy, in Alaska? And he made it like 9 summers getting next to grizzly. Surprised he made it 9 summers. But that's a grizzly bear.
Yeah, that's
it will swipe you with its big paw.
Yeah, that was like the turn of the tides when, and again, I'm going to go back to that Jane Goodall comment. She was like, wow, I'm having these really human interactions with these things.
Yeah, see, here's where we get in trouble.
She starts impressing her view of what she thinks reality is and associating that, they're acting like humans. Just because they characteristically might do
that's a
couple
form of
things.
Judgment.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden the whole pack goes nuts and they're beating the crap out of each other and they're eating the dead ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, not all humans are cannibals. Something's off here. No matter how much we want to think that, we're associated with them and they're very human-like, they're not.
No, like Disney's done a horrific job in making us feel like, it's cute, but
it's
making
cute.
us feel like these animals that we all love and endear are, secretly talking when we're not around, and they all love each other. And
I can appreciate how beautiful a cougar is.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about, a woman of age that's good looking. But
we love those.
When you look at like the fur and the ears and the eyes and its movement, gorgeous piece of creation.
Right.
But that thing will claw my face off.
Yeah. I mean, just that ability, and like when you watch a jaguar take a orc or something up a tree, like it's
holding it in the mouth and it's just clawing itself up the tree.
How one of those got away, at least 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's just holding it in its mouth and just climbs up a tree like it's no big deal.
Dragging it up there so it can have a
I
nice
saw that
meal.
one jaguar eat the alligator in the water, or crocodile.
That's amazing.
And it just grabs onto it and takes it up a tree.
They're beautiful, but we need to really look at the placement of these non-sentient or less sentient or less nervous system developed, creatures,
Mm-hmm.
and say they are going through their own purpose and energetic learning. It may not be a learning of thought, Jason,
Right.
but it's an energetic learning that is happening.
Yeah, and this healing ability, when we begin to listen to them, respect them, trust them, look at them for who they are specifically, that healing that begins to happen, and you can see that healing. Like I look at these people with PTSD. Let's use that for example, extreme cases, and the dogs are healing because it's two people. It's a dog and a person on the same level that begins to accept each other, and then you're allowing that love to transfer over, and then from there, that healing begins.
Yeah.
And so
the dog's not healing you. You allowed it to transfer,
there we go.
and now you're learning, and you're like, oh, I can begin to heal myself.
Yes.
Now I see how this works, and then your thoughts begin to change, and it's like, now I can go through my own process of healing.
Yeah, the dog becomes an example of creational laws.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And so in that example, and that's what we need to, when we filter things out, or when we view things, we need to understand that and look at that. Okay, well, here's the law of cause and effect that's happening. In this law, I may see what I appear to be negative, but what is going to be the cause and effect from it? And then how can I learn from that?
Yeah.
So that I don't create my actions in my future.
Every moment, every interaction is a learning moment.
Yes.
Always. Just
Yes.
always take it as that learning moment.
Yeah, I love that. So the little furry friends.
Woof. Woof. Yeah. And if if your dog gets its jaw lodged in a bone, no need to call me.
Yeah.
Just pull it off the same way it got in there.
Yeah, dogs are going to be dogs.
Don't panic.
That's just what they are.
Just what they are. Just let it be.